Have you ever been to a yoga class and the teacher has given everybody an opportunity to practice their inversions and it's all serene and everybody's just doing their thing and in the moment, and then BAM! Somebody in the corner of the yoga room falls, makes a loud noise. What happens? Often you'll hear some gasps. People's head will turn and their faces will look something like this. Well, this is exactly what will make handstands harder, not just for the person who fell, but for everyone else in the room too. And in this video, I'm going to explain why and what to do about it. I've been handstanding almost all my life, and I've been teaching handstands also to people of all ages, all levels, all over the world for the last decade. Teaching people how to handstand with confidence is probably my favorite thing in the whole world. And what I see over and over and over again in people who want to handstand, especially adults, is this notion that they need to avoid falling. And it makes sense from a neurological point of view, from the brain's point of view. The idea of falling, not to mention the loud noise when someone falls or when you yourself falls, these two things both trigger the only two fears that we are born with. Did you know that? Every single fear that you have, you learned at some point, except for 1, the fear of falling, and 2, the fear of loud noises. So from the get-go, if you're afraid of falling, if your face has ever turned into an ugly gargoyle when a loud noise surprises you, then guess what? You're normal and your nervous system is firing in the most normal and natural way. Handstands, however, are not natural. We have not evolved to stand or walk on our hands. So when we're learning handstands, we have to understand, first of all, that we are going against a lot of the ways that we are naturally wired. And believe me, that is not me saying that we should not learn handstands. There's all sorts of benefits to handstanding, which perhaps deserve a video of their own. But for now, I'm just going to assume that you're here watching this video because you are already interested in handstands and I don't need to preach the virtues of them to you. So we've established that we're wired innately to be afraid of falling and afraid of loud noises, and so that's why it's likely that when we fall from a handstand or any other balance, as well as when we hear a loud noise from somebody else falling, our little amygdala, the part of the brain famous, for making us fearful, it gets all lit up with activity. So what can we do about it? Well, in short, we need to start to wire our brains differently. We kind of have two brains, you see. This is not anatomically correct, my t-shirt, but let's just forget about that. And I'm not talking about left brain or right brain. What I mean is that we've got this old brain, like a lizard brain it's sometimes called, right? And it's this part of the brain that does all of the reflexive things, the autonomic things, all of the things that we don't have to think about consciously so we can get on with our day, right? It's regulating our heart rate, it's dilating our pupils for us, it's digesting our food and telling the immune system to do all the things to heal our wounds and whatnot. And this is also the part of the brain that's quite emotional, like that little amygdala. And then we have the new brain, the part of the brain that makes us human. It literally sits right up at the front. It's what sets us apart from the lizards, if we use it. This is things like the prefrontal cortex, which we use for planning ahead, for language, and here's the important part, for inhibiting the old brain. So in short, we have the power to use our new brain to take control over the things that the old brain does. We can say, okay, maybe I shouldn't be so afraid of falling from handstands since I need to learn to fall in order to learn to handstand, right? Are you with me? Do I need to explain why we need to learn to fall in order to do a handstand? Let's discuss it. First off, just a reminder that when you learned to walk, when you were a little tiny child, you fell a lot. It was easier then though, because you were closer to the ground, you were more innocent and naive, but also you're wired to fall in that way. It meant that you were probably falling on your nice, padded, baby soft little butt, right? When we fall from handstands, it's an entirely different thing, so please Give yourself grace and forgiveness and everything for being afraid of falling. It's an unnatural position to be falling from, and it's the head that we are specifically wired to protect. And we have all sorts of reflexes built into us so that if we do fall, we don't smash our head on the ground. And trust me, those reflexes will kick in when you're falling from a handstand, just as they do if you're falling from standing up. Nevertheless, though, our brain will likely be like, oh, I don't know if this is safe if we're upside down. Which brings me to the second point in this discussion. We have to learn to fall because it gives the brain information about what to expect. If you know how to fall, that is, you've done it at least once before, then your brain has information about how it may look a second or a third or a 50th time. If your brain can predict what something is going to look like or feel like or be like, then it's far more likely to feel safe. And then it will allow you to do that thing. I have a whole other video on this discussion. But the point is, we have to treat falling as a skill. And a skill is anything that you have to learn, right? So if you're learning how to run, you start with walking. If you're learning how to walk, you start with standing up. If you're learning how to hit a hole-in-one, then you start with learning how to swing the golf club. I guess. I don't know why I used a golf analogy because I know next to nothing about golfing. Anyway, the point is the same goes for falling. If we start small with something that resembles falling from a handstand, then we can build up to actually falling. Let me know if I need to make another video on this in more depth. And then once we have the skill of falling, we can be like Goldilocks. Yes, Goldilocks, as in Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Think about it, it's only because she ate Mama Bear's porridge, which was too cold, and then she also ate Papa Bear's porridge, which was too hot, that she could appreciate that Baby Bear's porridge was just right. And the same goes for handstanding. If you're always falling in the same direction that you came from, where you can land on your feet, then chances are you're not kicking all the way to vertical. Trust me, that sweet spot where you're balanced vertically, it often feels like you're going too far. If you've never felt it before, then it may feel like once you've got all your weight in your fingers where it needs to be, if you're not used to that, it might feel like you're gonna fall. But if you're well practiced on actually going too far, like eating Papa Bear's too hot porridge, right? Then you are able to better appreciate where that sweet spot is, where that balance is. You'll be able to play around in your handstand, different shapes, etc. Play around with holding it in different ways without the fear of falling holding you back, okay? So how does this relate to that proverbial person that's falling in the room and making a loud noise? Well, as mentioned, we can rewire our brains using our conscious, intellectual, new brain to choose a view of falling, whether it's someone else or ourselves, as a good thing. Falling is a skill, remember? So if you ever come to one of my classes and someone falls, I will clap. I will celebrate that. I'll say, well done, that was an awesome fall. The louder the fall is, the better. The more ungraceful the fall, the better. Because even though, yes, we need to think of falling as a skill, that doesn't mean it's gonna be pretty, especially when we're first learning that skill. It's gonna come with noise, it's gonna come with limbs flailing, and yes, maybe some bruises. Often with fear, you might feel disorientated and confused after you fall. All of that is okay. That doesn't mean we have to avoid it. That just means your brain is learning this skill, as well as your body and everything else. Trust me, once you've fallen as many times as I have, you don't get scared or disorientated anymore. So next time you're in that situation where somebody falls, whether it's from a handstand or some other anything, arm balance, whatever, if you can, compliment them for their amazing demonstration of learning this vital skill. And next time you fall from a handstand or arm balance, celebrate it. Just say to yourself, wow, I just did such a good job at falling. Look at me. Celebrating not just your own falls, but others too, will help rewire your brain not to associate falling as scary, this bad thing to avoid, but rather as a useful skill to learn. So let me know in the comments how you're going to celebrate falling, how you're going to practice falling, and if you have any questions. If you liked this video, please know it helps me immensely, especially as I'm just trying to really get my YouTube going. If you subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends who could maybe use some encouragement in falling. And I'll see you here again, my friend.